There's nothing more cool and violent than seeing somebody get elbowed flush to the face or the head during a Muay Thai or an MMA fight. You don't get to see it too often, but when you do, it is so amazing to watch. It's not very fun to receive, but on the watching end, it is spectacular, especially if you're looking for like violence and fighting. And so today, what we're gonna learn is how to fire a hooking elbow. Actually, some tips to make that hooking elbow a lot better. Everybody knows a general idea where the hooking elbow is like, it's just like a hook, right? Except it's an elbow. The same concepts that we utilize for the hook are the same as we utilize for the elbow, except with some slight adjustments. So let's make sure that we fire the hook properly first. And so for our general hooking elbow, we're gonna go straight across, just like we would with a left or right hook, making sure that we keep one hand, one shoulder touching our face, just in case they hit us back at the same time, and to get full extension on our strikes. And so we have that concept from one of the previous videos, right? Making sure that we have proper defense before, during, and after our striking. But as far as the elbow goes, those concepts still apply. Now, specifically for the elbows, there are a few things that will make your elbow most effective. And so when we're firing the elbow, first thing I want to do is I want to go thumb down and then thumb right into my chest, my sternum, my diaphragm area. And what that's going to do, it's almost going to frame my arm so there's not as much give. Now, keep in mind, this is very, very classical. This is very, very technique heavy. As people, like I always say, there's always human error, so the elbow is never always going to be perfect every single time, but at least we have the technique so that we can apply to make it as perfect as we can, as best as we can, as much as we can. And so, thumb down, thumb into your chest. What that's going to do is going to frame my elbow so there's less give. And I have my elbow out here, there's a lot more flex, a lot more slack that I can happen from here. It's nice and locked, it's nice and solid and rigid, and I want to make my elbow as solid and rigid as possible. That way it has a nice blunt force trauma when I'm trying to hit somebody. And so thumb down, thumb into my chest to not only frame my arm to keep it from moving around too much, but also to line up my forearm bone. A lot of times when I see people fire elbows, they throw it like this, and they end up landing here with all the meat. Will it still hurt? Yeah, it can still hurt, you know, but I want to cause as much damage as possible. And so when I go thumb down into my chest, it actually lines up my forearm bone, and it makes it so that I don't hit here, I hit here with more of my bone. Which brings me into my next point. Placement of my elbow is important too. Now, there are two general types of elbows that we can throw as far as hooking elbows go, or elbows in general. Today we're going to focus just on the hooking elbow. If I want a slicing elbow, like I want to cause a laceration, cut them up and whatnot, by the way, this is all for sport, and in theory I would advise against using this against anybody on purpose. All this stuff is for sport and educational purposes only, please. When I go thumb down, lines up my forearm, and I have two types. I have my slicing elbow, which if I use the tip of my elbow, it'll cut somebody open, kind of just nick them, right? And you'll see it a lot on the head, especially when you see MMA Muay Thai fights. You see these huge gashes on people's heads. It's usually from elbows. Thin skin, heavy, dense elbow, and you just nick them wide open. It's very graphic. I'm sure if you just type in elbows, elbow KOs, or best elbows of the year or something, you'll see a lot of these violent elbows. And so that's the slicing elbow. For me, honestly, as not just a practitioner, but a fan of the sport, I'm not a big fan of the slicing elbows because it ends the fight way too soon. You see it all the time. My teammates have experienced it as well. It just ends the fight before it even really gets started, or just ends it without any kind of like good closure, you know? And so I prefer, if I'm gonna fire an elbow at somebody, and I love throwing elbows, is to use more of a forearm, a thudding elbow. So that way it doesn't cause more of a laceration, it causes more kind of just blunt force traumas. Bah, bah, bah. And it hurts way more. And so we have those two types of elbows. We have our slicing elbow, in which we land with the tip of our elbow and we try to nick them. And we have our thudding elbow where I hit with my forearm. Bah! And it's going to be much more thudding, much more painful. So we have those tips that will make your elbow as effective as possible. Thumb down, thumb to your chest, turn. And remember to apply all of the general basic fundamental concepts that we've applied before in our other videos too as well. Having one hand, one shoulder touching our face, making sure we have proper weight distribution. Remember, as we're striking, I want 70% of the weight on my front foot and 30% of the weight on my back foot. And so take the tips from today for specifically the hooking elbow, combine it with all the concepts and principles that we applied in all the other videos or everywhere else you've learned, because the beauty of martial arts that you put everything together and apply that to this elbow. So thumb down, thumb to your chest, turn, wah. Not letting our head go past the front of our foot, 70% on the front foot, 30% on the back foot, and making sure we breathe properly, right? Exhale with every strike. Don't hold your breath, otherwise you're gonna have less power, you're gonna have less cardio, nothing but bad things. Only benefits to exhaling. So when I fire the hooking elbow, bang. When I fire the lead hooking elbow, it's the same exact thing. I'm gonna go thumb down, thumb into my chest, I'm gonna turn. One hand, one shoulder, touching my face as I go, lining it up. And you can decide to go slicing or thudding. If you're gonna go slicing, you're gonna be a little bit further, so you're in proper range. If you're gonna go thudding, you're gonna go much deeper, because there's like a 8-inch difference between the tip of your elbow and the middle of your forearm. Range-wise, you wanna make sure you're at the proper range for elbows. And so our general range is at the end of our jab hand. From here, I can punch, but look, I'm way too short to elbow. And if I lunge forward to try to land that elbow, I've broken my principles. One of them is getting my head past the front of my foot. I don't want that. And so if I'm gonna be in punching distance here and I want to elbow them, all I have to do is get closer so that I can elbow them. Does that make sense? Yes, it does. Maybe don't talk to myself. So make sure you're in the proper range too as well when you're firing these elbows, guys. And that applies to all elbows, but today's focus is going to be that hooking elbow. So semi-live, let's see what it looks like when we put it all together. Remember our basic striking concepts, proper weight distribution, proper width of your feet, proper breathing, having our hand-shoulder concept, and making sure we have defense before, during, and after our striking. Sounds like a lot of stuff, right? But we keep on building until it becomes second nature, and it's just another thing, muscle memory. So I want to punch in range, I'm gonna get in range from the elbow, and then back out in range when I'm done striking. So come on, out, and I'm out. In, and I'm out. In, I'm out. In, and I'm out. And it should look like that. That is our video on hooking elbows. Tips for better hooking elbows. That is it. If you guys find this video helpful and you want to see more, please subscribe if you're on YouTube, like, share, follow if you're on the other social media outlets. Appreciate your support. I'll be making more long-form videos by popular request and good tutelage from my influencer friends and coaches. Guys, thanks for your time. Have an awesome day. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Oh yeah.